Greetings everybody and welcome to another request video. This one is for Rohan, who wrote in a comment on one of my recent videos. I was wondering if you could help me with a command. I want to make fire rain down from the sky with a message in chat saying something like fire rains down from the sky, possibly in red color. I have no idea where to start. Help, please. So, I've created such a contraption. And this is a completely new world here. There's nothing in it. I've just spawned in, and I'm gonna give myself a command block, and we're gonna grab a button. This device you can get either as a one command contraption, and that's the one I'm gonna show you here, or you can get it as a schematic. So just paste the command in there, hit the button, and get some stuff, including this button on these command blocks and this fail clock. Now notice that this is currently off. That's because you have to press this button to start it. So now we have a machine in our world. It doesn't really do anything until we finish this thing, so we don't need these anymore. Let's throw this away, and I'm going to grab a few other things. Now that's going to include a jungle wood, piece of jungle wood, and hay bales, and a torch. So the way I chose to do this, because it's cool, is you do the ritual of fire in order to summon a rain of fire from the sky. And the ritual of fire is simply one piece of exotic jungle wood in the center, hay bales all around it, and then you're going to throw a torch on it. And let me show you what happens. Ritual of fire has been completed. Sorry, cow. And apparently when you do this around a big forest, you get a bunch of lag because you light everything on fire. But hey, you get steak. Nom 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 nom. Let's go back over to our machine and let's explain how this works. So this thing is just a game rule to turn command block output off. This thing is just a set block to start the clock here. And the other two are the two scoreboards that we use. So we use one called ritual and one called fire. That's all we need in terms of scoreboards. Now, the first little part of this contraption is about detecting that you've done the ritual. Wow, that's a lot of fire. That you've completed the ritual and summon in all the armor stands that we are going to use as the things falling from the sky, the fire falling from the sky. And then we have another little section over here that makes sure that those armor stands are slightly out of sync, because otherwise they all land in the very same tick and cause a whole lot of lag. And then we have some other stuff that causes them to, when they have landed, actually transfer into actual fire on the ground, like so. That can affect the world and make a little sound and stuff. And of course the message is in here too. So I'm going to go through it in detail to show Rohan and everybody else how it's done. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find items in the world, and we're going to set their ritual score to 1 if they are a torch. Because the torch is what drives this thing. We want to identify the torch and then find out if it's on the kind of configuration of blocks that we saw there. And that is what we're doing here. Now this is a terribly long command. I'm going to put it to the side of this, just on screen instead, so you can actually see what it's done. But essentially what we're doing is we're detecting a structure of 5 blocks by doing a nested execute detect. So first we do an execute detect to see that there's a wood log underneath with exactly the correct type. So it has to be a jungle wood standing up. And then we detect hay blocks around you in all the 4 directions. So that's 5 different execute detects. And at the very end of that, we do a scoreboard player set to set the ritual score to 2. So at this point we have a ritual score of 2 for the torch that's laying on top of that wood block with hay blocks all around it. So now we can execute off of that torch. It has a score of ritual that's 2, and that's the only thing that has a score of ritual 2. And we can summon a lightning bolt. That's pretty cool. And we can execute off of that thing and do a tell raw. And the tell raw is going to tell all the players an empty string, which is not very useful, but what this does is There's a lot of misconceptions about this, by the way, but what this first part of the tell rod does is set the base format of the string. That means that if you set a color or something of one of the substrings that come after it, and then you set none as the color, it will go back to the color of this first thing. So you leave it blank to get a blank white base color. Wouldn't strictly be necessary in this one, but I like to include it anyway. Text is the ritual fire has been completed, the color is red. That's all we're going to do to it. You can make this arbitrarily complex if you want. And if you're working with Talros and you want fancy stuff, then just go to minecraftjson.com, I believe it is. I'll leave a link in the video description. And that is a Talraw generator that will do all of this weird stuff for you. Simple enough. Next block to execute is this one. We're going to again execute off of that torch. It has a score of ritual that is 2. And we're going to summon an armor stand that is called a new fire. It's going to be small armor stand, invisible and invulnerable. So we're just summoning an armor stand exactly on top of the torch there. Now let the fun begin. Now we're going to run the same command a whole bunch of time, which might seem weird, but it'll become apparent in a second here. So execute for that new fire that we made and summon another armor stand. And it's also called a new fire, and it's also small, and it's also invisible and also invulnerable. So why do we do that? Well, we had one such stand, now we have 2. Okay. So we run the same command again. This time it's going to run for both of those armor stands, which means we get 2 new ones. So now we have 4. And then we're going to run again. Now we have 8. And again. Now we have 16. And again. Now we have 32. And again. Now we have 64. And again. And now we have 128 armor stands called New Fire. Just like that. And they're all in the same place. Aha! So that was the first part of it. Now we have 128 armor stands called New Fire, ready to light fire to our forest. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set all of those to have a fire score of 0. And this is the way we're going to track how to offset them later. But if they have a fire score of 0, then we know that we haven't sort of processed them yet. And by the way, I like to lay things out like this on a fill clock. Obviously, you could compact this by pulling in together. But also, I left the space blank here because then you could add more and more of these commands if you want more and more fire. Of course, it seems to lag plenty already with this mount. And if it's lagging too much for you, then you can just kill one of the blocks and you get half as much fire. So that's pretty neat. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to again execute for that torch that's still on top of that block. It has a ritual score of 2. So that torch is still there. And for the torch, we're going to do spread players. And what this means is we spread the players around a position that is exactly where the torch is. They have to be at least 2 blocks apart and a maximum radius of 16. So this is how you define the area where the fire will rain. What 16 means here is that they can be spread 16 blocks away from the center point in X and Z directions. So this is actually a square. It's not a circle, it's a square. This false here just says preserve the teams, doesn't matter. The armor stands are not on a team. And then we're going to take everything called New Fire and we're going to spread it out. The thing with the spread players command though is that it places everything on the ground, on ground level. So now we're going to take all of those New Fire ones and we're going to teleport them 100 blocks into the air because we want the fire to rain from the sky. And then finally we're going to take those New Fire armor stands and we're going to do an entity data on them to switch their name to only Fire because now they're not new anymore. And we're going to add silent onto them because otherwise when they fall, when an armor stand falls, it makes a sound. It makes the kind of crack my bones kind of sound that the players also do when they fall and take damage. So we want to get rid of that because that sounded really odd, to be honest. Your fire falling from the sky and going crack. And then we're going to kill the torch. The torch has done its job and we get rid of it. Aha, so now we have a whole bunch of armor stands falling from the sky in randomized positions. There's still no fire involved though. That could be a problem. Let's fix that. So now we're going to take a bunch of these armor stands and it's going to be randomly selected ones because we are using @r, and since we're using @r we have to put in type equals armor stand because otherwise it only applies to players. And it's going to be the ones named the fire and it's going to be 4 of them. So we take 4 random fire ones and we set their ritual score to -1, but only if they're on the ground. So once they've fallen all the way to the ground, they're going to get a ritual score of -1. Okay, what do we use that for? Well, Here we're going to use it to execute for all the armor stands that have a ritual score of -1. So the ones that we just selected, then we're going to do a set block fire. Aha, set fire to the world. So once they've landed, they're going to set fire to the world, and the reason we do it for randomly selected ones is that otherwise you would get a terrible amount of lag if you're trying to set block a whole bunch of them at once. So we sort of spread it out by doing only 4 every tick. Okay, we're going to execute again off of all of those armor stands and do a play sound of the fizz, and that is, if I just do this, it's like I threw a burning mob into the ocean, or I put out fire, that kind of sound. So that's the sound it plays when it lands. And then finally, if it has a score of -1, we can kill it, because now it's already done its job. It's set fire to the world. Aha! So now we have a bunch of armor stands. They get summoned by you doing that ritual, and they fly up into the sky, and they fall back down, and then when they land, they set fire to the world. That's pretty cool, but there's still no fire raining from the sky, is there? So last bit of stuff that we're going to do is we're going to take one single random armor stand that has a score of 0 in the fire scoreboard. So remember, we set all of the armor stands to have a score of 0 in the fire scoreboard at the beginning of all of this. So we're setting that to 1 now for one random armor stand that's falling. And for that armor stand, we're just going to take it and we're going to teleport it to itself. Now that seems to be very unproductive, but it actually does one very important thing, and that thing is it resets their momentum. So if they're falling, it's sort of gonna just stop falling and then start falling over again. That sort of slows them down a little bit and causes them to get out of sync. Now that's important because that means that not all of them are going to land at exactly the same tick. Once we've done that, we're going to do entity data on the same fire armor stands, and we're going to set their fire data field. Now their fire data field is a counter on how long they are going to burn. And this is essentially just setting that counter to the maximum value. So now we've set them to burn, and now we are done with that one. We don't need to consider it anymore when we're trying to randomize which ones we should do next. So we just take their score in this fire scoreboard and reset it. So now they're out of the fire scoreboard. They can no longer be selected, and we don't have to keep track of their scores. And these, of course, are just the fail clock blocks. So these keep the clock running, and that is all we do. Haha, we have broken this forest pretty good here, but whoops. There you go. The ritual of fire has been completed. And yeah, something I didn't really think about there is that the scoreboard is actually counting downwards to -1, which means that only the top ones are seen. So yeah, that's not so very useful maybe. But yeah, that's how it works. I hope you enjoyed that little device, and I hope that Rohan gets some use out of this. As I said, you can get it as a one command kind of deal. That's what we used here. Or you can get it as a schematic file and put it into your world that way. I'm also going to put up a world with this summoned into it and running. So if you just want to toy around with it, there's a world where it's already ready and waiting as a download. So if you want any of those, go to the video description, click on the link, and you will get that. If you have any requests of your own that you would like to see me make, then drop down into the comment field below and let me know what you would like to see. And I'll pick something new for next time. So thank you very much to Rohan for the request. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.